Hello dear students, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 28th October 2024 and today we have some important articles for the discussion, and one by one we'll try to discuss all these important articles. So please remember that yesterday in previous class that I have given one prelims practice question. So we'll try to solve that prelims practice question, and I also have one more prelims practice question for today. So try to answer that particular question in the comment section, and correct answer will be providing you in tomorrow's class. So yesterday's question was, emission gap report of 2024 is published by which of the following organizations? So the correct answer for this question is option B, United Nations Environment Program. So United Nations Environment Program publishes the emission gap report of 2024. So such questions are being repeatedly asked in prelims examination. So therefore it is very important that you need to identify major reports and the organizations and agencies which have been publishing these reports. So at least you can get one question from this particular aspect alone. And if you look at the explanation for this question, as I have already told you that United Nations Environment Program UNEP publishes the emission gap report, and in fact it is a series which tracks our progress in limiting the global warming as well as achieving the target of limiting the emissions or limiting increasing temperatures way below 2 degrees Celsius, and also if possible pursuing the goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is in line with the Paris Agreement. However, since we knew that Conference of Parties 21, it is also known as Paris Climate Summit. Paris Climate Summit of UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So since 2010, it has provided an annual science-based assessment of the gap between the estimated future global greenhouse gases emissions. So if countries implement their climate mitigation pledges, because each country have their own commitments, their own obligations and their own pledges with respect to reducing the amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, thereby they should be to avoid the worst impact of the climate change on this planet Earth. And in fact, each year the emission gap report highlights key opportunities to bridge the emissions gap and also tackling specific issue of interest as well. Now, one thing that you need to remember with respect to emission gap report is that this report is published by United Nations Environment Program. So the overall objective of this report is to assess the global progress towards limiting the greenhouse gas emissions and also keeping the rising temperatures well below 2 degrees Celsius at the global level. So you just remember this, and that would be enough with respect to this report. So as I have already told you that today also we have one more prelims practice question. The question is, Istanbul Convention, which is sometimes seen in news, is related to what? Option A, criminalizing acts of financing of terrorism. Option B, protection of ozone layer. Option C, protecting cultural and natural heritage. And option D, preventing violence against women. So this is a very important convention. So if you knew about this, so try to answer this question in the comment section. And the first article, which is given in the Indian Express newspaper, and it talks about India and United Arab Emirates bilateral investment treaty. So we will understand what is this bilateral investment treaty. Now, why countries sign this bilateral investment treaty and how this bilateral investment treaty with United Arab Emirates will benefit India. So those different aspects or dimensions we are going to discuss in this particular editorial. So what is the context? So we need to understand the context before understanding this editorial in a much more deeper and in-depth manner. So the context is that, so bilateral investment treaty between India and United Arab Emirates, it came into existence on August 31st, 2024, right? So remember this, August 31st, 2024, this bilateral investment treaty between India and United Arab Emirates came into effect. And in fact, this bilateral investment treaty has replaced the earlier existing bilateral investment promotion and protection agreement, which is also known as BIPPA. So before this bilateral investment treaty between India and UAE, there was also another bilateral investment treaty that was existing between these two countries, which is also known as bilateral investment promotion and protection agreement. And this bilateral investment treaty between these two countries aims to enhance the economic cooperation. And if you look at the bilateral trade between these two countries, UAE is one of the largest trading partner for India. And in fact, UAE is also one of the significant source of foreign direct investment. So we all knew the importance of foreign direct investment because it can create physical infrastructure, it can also create large scale gainful employment opportunities, and it could also boost exports from India, so thereby achieving the desired levels of economic growth as well as economic development. So the bilateral investment treaty is particularly notable in the context of India's recent struggles with bilateral treaties and also declining FDI inflows. Now, if you carefully look at the available data on FDI inflows, so the data clearly, and comprehensively informing us that there has been a declining trend of or declining inflow of foreign direct investment treaties. And in fact, India has been struggling with the bilateral investment treaties as well. So in this context, this bilateral investment treaty between India and United Arab Emirates is very, very important. However, there are certain key provisions of India and United Arab Emirates bilateral investment treaty. So we will try to understand what are those key provisions. And the new bilateral investment treaty between these two countries has substantially reduced the period for investors to exhaust the local remedies before seeking an international arbitration. So that the time reduced time as part of this bilateral investment treaty is from 5 years to 3 years. So thereby it has been reflecting a more flexible approach to dispute resolution. Now I'll tell you what does it mean. Okay, so I'll explain this. For example, UAE has invested around 1 billion in India, right? So 1 billion in India. And after UAE made its investment, there is a trade dispute. There is a trade dispute or any other dispute with respect to UAE's investment in India. So in case of a dispute, first UAE has to go through the available local remedies. Okay, so available local remedies before approaching the international institutions for arbitration between India and UAE. So however, earlier the time period was 5 years, right? So but under the bilateral investment treaty, the time period has been reduced to just 3 years. So after 3 years, the UAE can approach the international institutions for arbitration between India and UAE. Thereby, UAE companies which are investing in India and they have any sort of trade dispute, they don't need to wait for 5 long years, but after 3 years, they can approach the international institutions, International Court of Arbitration, right? That is located in Singapore, international institutions for arbitration. So this is a welcome step because that would have a positive impact and positive implications on attracting the attracting large scale foreign direct investments into India. So I hope you have understood this. Secondly, the bilateral investment treaty between these two countries also include a certain clause, and this clause has been prohibiting investors from utilizing a third party funding for disputes, right? For example, if there is a trade dispute between UAE and India, so in this case UAE investors cannot use the third party funding. What is third party funding? For example, any country which has been funding the trade disputes of UAE with India. So thereby the bilateral investment treaty has also included a separate clause which has been prohibiting the interference or involvement of third party or providing third party funding to trade disputes with India. So which contrasts with the growing acceptance of such funding in India's legal landscape. So in this way also there will be no third party interference when these two countries are fighting a legal battle over these trade related issues and investment related issues. And in fact, the bilateral investment treaty, by broadening the scope to include not just the foreign direct investment, but it also includes the foreign portfolio investments. So both foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment are important source of the forex reserves, right? So we knew that it is an important source of forex reserves, thereby covering the foreign portfolio investments. The bilateral investment treaty's scope has been further broadened or widened, and in fact the bilateral investment treaty further allows financial investors to seek a recourse or seek a proper way under its dispute settlement mechanisms, potentially increasing India's overall exposure to investment disputes over a period of time. So we can say that all such clauses are a welcome step, a welcome initiative between these two countries, because it benefits India by further enhancing FDI inflows into India. So we all knew the multiplier effect of foreign direct investment on Indian economy, economic growth as well as development, right? So apart from that, since India and UAE are key trade partners, and in fact UAE is one of the largest trade partner for India, so this bilateral investment treaty also has the potential to further substantially enhance the cooperation in different and wide variety of areas. So bilateral investment treaty aims to balance between attracting foreign investment. So when I say foreign investment, it includes foreign direct investment as well as foreign portfolio investment, so thereby maintaining states' regulatory rights which are essential for the economic aspirations of India, right? So that is also one of the important implication for India. So secondly, the bilateral investment treaty between India and UAE may further influence India's ongoing negotiations for free trade agreement, right? So we have been negotiating this free trade agreements with European Union, United Kingdom, Canada and other key countries, and it is expected that the bilateral investment treaty will influence the negotiations of India for a free trade agreements with UK, European Union and other countries, because as it sets a precedent for a flexible investment terms, right? So we can say that it will have a positive implication, right? So it will have a positive implication on India. And despite challenges in contract enforcement and geopolitical factors, right? So there are a lot of challenges, because when we brought an agreement, when there is an agreement between these two different countries over investments, over trade related aspects, so there are a lot of challenges. For example, challenges with respect to contract enforcement, challenges particularly the geopolitical factors. So they can be considered as a major challenges, but despite challenges, this bilateral investment treaty is a step forward to foster a robust cross-border economic system. So remember, as I have already told you, that UAE is one of the key trade partners for India, one of the largest trade partners for India. So thereby it helps in fostering a robust cross-border economic ecosystem, thereby aligning with India's vision of becoming a $5 trillion economy. So remember that by 2025 we wanted to become a $5 trillion economy. So not just becoming a $5 trillion economy, we wanted to become the third largest economy very soon. So that goal and objective can be achieved by such treaties, because they have spin-off effects on number of other agreements and free trade agreements with other countries as well, right? So I hope you have understood about this bilateral investment treaty between India and UAE. And the second article that we are going to discuss is about the livestock census that the union government has decided to conduct. And in fact, you need to remember that this is going to be the 21st livestock census, right? So just remember this 21st livestock census that the union government has to has decided to conduct. So why this is in news? So what is the context of the census? The center has launched 21st National Livestock Census, and this is a 5-yearly exercise. So it is conducted once in a 5 years for counting livestock across the country. Right? So you have to remember that this is a national livestock exercise. This is 21st National Livestock Exercise, and it is conducted once in a 5 years. So some details with respect to National Livestock Census included: this National Livestock Census is a nationwide exercise, or it is a nationwide survey. As I have told you that this National Livestock Census is conducted once in a 5 years to count all domesticated animals across the country, across all households, enterprises, institutions, both in urban as well as rural areas. And in fact, this National Livestock Census also provides a detailed data on the population and the numbers of breeds, distribution of livestock such as cattle, buffalo, goats, sheep, pigs, and other animals across the country. And which ministry usually conduct these livestock census? So it is being conducted by the Ministry of Animal Husbandry and Dairying. So there is a separate ministry, Ministry of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, and that particular ministry conducts the livestock census, collaborating with state and union governments since 1919. Because remember that this is 21st livestock census. So what is this 20th livestock census, and what are some details with respect to 20th livestock census? So according to this census, total livestock population is 535.78 million. Okay, so this is the total livestock population in India, and there is an increase of 4.6%. And so you can also go through other minute details of the livestock census just by going through this data. And apart from that, this 21st National Livestock Census is the latest in the series of conducting livestock census once in a 5 years, and it also includes data collected using a dedicated mobile app for improved accuracy as well as the real-time monitoring. So what is the significance, what is the importance of the livestock census? So that aspect we should understand. What is the significance of the livestock census? So the significance is that it helps in the development, or it helps the government to develop certain policies and develop framework, a proper framework for the livestock sector growth, covering aspects like breed improvement, disease control, as well as a feed management. And in fact, it also provides insights into the role of livestock in enhancing rural incomes, nutrition, as well as employment opportunities as well. Because remember that dairying is one sector which has a potential which has a lot of potential for women empowerment. It also has a lot of potential to create gainful employment opportunities for the rural youth as well, apart from entrepreneurship. So the data which has been collected through the National Livestock Census will be used to support initiatives such as National Livestock Mission, which focuses on breed development, feed, fodder improvement and innovation in the livestock practices. So in all these areas, this data can be used, and it also tracks the indigenous livestock breeds to support breed specific conservation as well as sustainable practices. And secondly, which animals will be covered as part of the livestock census. So we should also understand this, right? So when we talk about the animals which will be counted, which will be covered under the census, so the census will encompass a diverse range of animals, with data being collected on 16 species including cattle, buffalo, mutton, yak, sheep, goat, pig, camel, horse, ponies, mule, donkey, dog, rabbit, elephant. So all these different animals will be the data on all these animals will be part of the National Livestock Census. So in total, the census will account for 219 indigenous breeds which are being recognized by Indian Council of Agricultural Research, National Bureau of Animal Genetic Resources. Right? So you just remember the National Bureau of Animal Genetic Resources. And apart from that, it will also include a head count of various poultry birds such as chickens, ducks, turkeys, geese, quails, ostriches and emus. So head count of all these birds will also be part of the 21st National Livestock Census. So the next important article is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi cautious against the digital arrest frauds. So we will understand what is this digital arrest and how it takes place, and what are the initiatives that the government has launched to prevent these digital arrest frauds. So the context is that during a episode of his radio program, which is Man Ki Baat of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, so Prime Minister draw attention to the digital arrest frauds. So we'll understand what are these digital arrest frauds, so thereby potentially warning people against this scam of digital arrest. Now, what exactly is a digital arrest? So digital arrest is a new form of cyber fraud. So time and again we have been seeing a potential increase in cybercrime or cyber fraud. So this digital arrest is also a one form of cyber fraud. And in fact, so the accused video call and pose a law enforcement agency officials like CBI or customs officials. So that essentially means that you may get a call. The people who are committing this crime potentially pose themselves as a law enforcement officers, that they say that they are from the customs, they are from the CBI, that you may have involved in a crime. So thereby creating a fear within you, right? So creating a fear within you and try to extract some ransom from you. So that is the overall objective of this digital arrest. And they also give threats of arrest in the name of fake international parcels of banned drugs. So they just call you and they just say that you are involved in drug trafficking, you're part of the drug trafficking network. So they create fear, they start threatening you, and they also ask you to send them some money to make sure that you completely come out of these accusations. So organized economic crime operated by the cross-border crime syndicates. So very often these are being done by the out-of-country individuals or organizations. Now, what are these digital arrest scams? So we'll look into this in a more detailed manner. So what are these digital arrest crimes? Because there is a high probability that questions are being asked on this, since Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been touched on this subject. So digital arrest scams involve fraudulent individuals, and those fraudulent individuals very often pose themselves as government officials, and they try to contact victims via a phone call, right? So through platforms such as WhatsApp and Skype. So therefore, all of us need to be more and more cautious about these digital arrest scams. And in fact, these scammers who calls you typically accuse the victims of involvement in illegal activities, particularly drug trafficking, or your involvement or your engagement with these drug trafficking networks, or even handling the suspicious packages as well. And thirdly, to make their deception convincing, these scammers often use elaborate setups that mimic police stations, wear customs that include the official badges as well. So in fact, they also employ intimidation tactics, and they also make victims believe they are under the digital arrest, right? This is what is known as the digital arrest. And in fact, the pressure builds during the lengthy calls that these individuals hold with the victims, where scammers usually outline the dire consequences for non-compliance, and they threaten you and they create fear within you by saying that you will face dire consequences, you will face worst consequences of non-compliance, thereby culminating a set of demands for money as a means to secure the victim's release or to stop the supposed legal proceedings as well. And so what is the government response to counter these digital arrest claims or scams? So the government has established I4C. So what is this I4C? So the Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center. So that is known as I4C, the Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center, that was created under Ministry of Home Affairs to address the growing menace of cybercrime, including the digital arrest scams as well. Because remember, this is very, very important for your prelims examination as well as mains examination, and these questions are being repeatedly asked in the exam. And in collaboration with various tech companies like Microsoft, the Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center has successfully blocked over 1,000 Skype IDs which are being associated with these fraudulent activities. And the government has also been running a series of awareness campaigns to create awareness, to educate people, and to disseminate knowledge about this digital arrest scams. So the government has launched various initiatives to educate the public about the risks of such scams. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi, taking up the issue of digital arrest crime as part of his Mann Ki Bharat speech, is part of the education, or to educate individuals, to educate public about these scams and spread awareness. And in fact, so you can also go through a number of such instances where people are being victims of the cybercrime. So even a retired IAS officer lost 11.5 lakh to tricksters. The resident of CBD area filed a complaint with High Grounds Police. So you can see a lot of such instances being taking place regularly. So the next important article is that recently Supreme Court has held that Aadhaar cannot be used as a proof of date of birth. And why Supreme Court has said that Aadhaar cannot be used as a proof of date of birth? In what context the Supreme Court has held, and what are the other documents that Supreme Court has referred to, and those documents can be used as a proof of date of birth? So what is the context of this article? The context is that the Supreme Court's recent ruling on Aadhaar cards not being a valid proof of age. Now, one thing that you need to remember, that Aadhaar card is not a valid proof of citizenship. It is clearly mentioned, and in fact, in UPSC Prelims Examination 2018 also this was asked. Its Aadhaar card is not a valid proof of citizenship, and Supreme Court recently held that a date of birth of an individual cannot be ascertained from Aadhaar card alone. Okay, so it is not a valid proof of age, and it has garnered a significant attention, particularly in relation to the compensation claims of the motor vehicle accidents. And in fact, this case involved a family of man who died in an accident, so with the compensation amount hinging on his age as listed on various documents, including his Aadhaar card and even school leaving certificate. So the ruling of the Supreme Court saying that Aadhaar card is not a valid proof document for verifying the date of birth. So this was promoted or prompted by a compensation dispute involving deceased age. So initially, Punjab and Haryana High Court used the age which is listed on the Aadhaar card to calculate the compensation, applying a specific multiplier based on that age. However, the family has contended that the school leaving certificate indicated a different age, warranting a higher compensation amount. So there is a difference. There are different date of birth in school leaving certificate and Aadhaar card. And family has contended that the school leaving certificate has a different Aadhaar card, and the family of the deceased also demanded a higher compensation. Right? So in this road accident case, the Supreme Court has also criticized the lower court's reliance on Aadhaar card, referencing established legal precedents and provisions that indicate specific documents such as a school leaving certificate as a valid proof of age. And in fact, the Supreme Court has also emphasized the importance of using a verified educational documents rather than Aadhaar, which was primarily intended for a proof of identity. So Aadhaar card is just a proof of identity, rather it is not a proof of date of birth. So what did the Supreme Court says now? What is the opinion of the Supreme Court? So Supreme Court in its judgment has reiterated that Aadhaar should not be considered as a proof of age, because the Supreme Court has rightly cited that Section 94 of the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015. So this is a legislation which protects children who are below 18 years of age. So this section specifies that matriculation or equivalent certificates are acceptable for determining the age of individual. What are the previous Supreme Court's rulings in this context? So the Supreme Court has also referred to a 2018 ruling that characterized Aadhaar as a proof of identity. And in fact, the Supreme Court in 2018 judgment has explicitly stated that it does not serve as a proof of date of birth. And in fact, the court has also overturned Punjab Haryana High Court's decision establishing that the school leaving certificate should be used to determine the age of a deceased individual for calculating compensation, and ultimately awarding the family a 15 lakh based on the correct multiplier. So by this, the Supreme Court has held that Aadhaar card not a suitable as a proof of date of birth. So the Supreme Court has also suggested that the school leaving certificate, a mark sheet, can be used as a date of birth of the individual, right? So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our work, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.